Hey there, it's Craig from Inbound Ignited, here to share with you some thoughts on process design. If you're thinking about making changes to your process, we recommend that you start with documenting your process. But you might ask yourself, what is a process? Process is a system. It includes people, machines potentially, materials, methods, measurement, environment. There's a lot of things to think about in a system. A process, every single one has an input or inputs, a process or a sequence of steps that happen, and then outputs and then measurements. You can measure the cycle time of how long that process takes. So, with that in mind, we think of systems as a continuous process flow where one person or one function's output is another person's input. We think about process design when you're having handoffs, for instance, in this example, from sales to processing. You want to make sure that every activity, every task that sales is responsible for is done completely and accurately before it's handed to the processing team. And the same goes from processing to underwriting, underwriting to closing. You will find that problems in the upstream parts of the process really manifest themselves significantly toward the end of the process flow. So, an issue that happened in sales that wasn't corrected, that was passed to processing that wasn't collected, that was passed to underwriting that wasn't corrected, gets all the way to closing, that's where the problem blows up. So it's very important to have checks of quality throughout the process to make sure that when you're having handoffs from one function to another, that their work is done completely and accurately. So how do you document this stuff? There's 4 levels of process mapping. The first level is the highest level process, where you might, in this example, call it the application registration process. You could map this across at a high level through your entire process. It might include the input from customers to processing an application to underwriting an application to closing an application to sending it on to an investor. So it could be very high level. Level 2 is a sub process of the process level 1. So in this example, we've taken one piece of the process, which is application registration process, and we've blown it out into another layer of detail. These are initial customer contact inquiry, pre-qualification, and completing the loan application. And then you'll see as we go deeper into level 3, it takes the level 2 sub-process and actually blows that out into even more level of detail. So when an application is being registered, the sub-process of making that initial customer contact includes answering the phone, authenticating the customer's identity, identifying what that customer needs are, discussing products, terms, and rates, and entering that information into the CRM. So that's documenting the initial customer contact inquiry of the level 1 process of application registration. Right? Level 4 goes even one step deeper. This is where you're going to get into your standard operating procedures, something that you might want to document if you're managing a large team of people, so that you can ensure that these steps are all being handled consistently with the process steps that you've designed. So, for main purposes of documenting process, if you're trying to get to the procedures level, this is a function that you can use to framework that you can use to identify what your process is. Now, if you're trying to set up, let's say, a new CRM, let's say you're trying to use HubSpot, you're trying to understand how you can create automation. Well, you want to document your existing as-is process in this level, and then evaluate that process to see where you might be able to improve it. From there, you might want to only do level 1 and level 2. You don't maybe necessarily have to go all the way to level 3, but if you're creating some significant automation in your process, you may want to get down to that level 3 mapping. Level 4 may be overkill depending on what you're trying to get accomplished. Another option to use to map your process is this thing we call SIPOC. That stands for suppliers, inputs, process, outputs, and customer. In every process, there's a supplier. In the example previous, there was an applicant, so the supplier could be someone made a phone call, so they're supplying a phone call into your call center. The inputs could be things like data or information. The process could be what your call center rep does with that data or information. Do they type it into a calculator? Do they enter it into a CRM, etc.? The output could be a completed loan application. The output could be a customer who did not apply. So the output could be a rejected sales deal. And the customers are the next people who handle that information. So let's say that customer who supplies the phone call, which is the input to the call center rep, who takes the application, which goes into the LOS, and the LOS creates a queued work item for an underwriter to look at as the output. Right? The person who takes that output of that queued loan to be underwritten is the underwriter. So they're the person that takes the handoff. How you can document a SIPOC is very simple. Here's a template that you could use. There's a component name, which is the step of the process, the who owns it, which group or function is responsible for it, which is the trigger, how does this thing get started, and what is the description of the component, and then when does it end? And then the SIPOC lists the SIPOC acronym, suppliers, inputs, process, output, customers, in columns, and basically you list for this process step, what are all the potential suppliers that get this process started? It could be a potential borrower. It could be the telephony system delivering a call into your call center. It could be a lead from the website. It could be a direct mail campaign where someone answers the phone. It could be someone walks into a brick and mortar retail branch. It could be a realtor calling you or any other type of referral source. The inputs are, it could be a phone call, it could be a web lead submission, it could be a bank walk-in, it could be borrower information, or it could be an offer code. Those are all inputs that might need to be processed. The process in this example is customer contact is made. Either the call center rep answers the call or they make contact with the customer with a phone call or send an email to them. They also authenticate the customer's identity. They identify what the needs are. They discuss products, terms, and rates. And then they enter all this information into the CRM. Right? So the output could be an updated CRM record. It could be an identified potential mortgage customer. It could be sourcing data of where that lead came from. It could be application data potentially that might be appended to that applicant's record. The next step for this process to be handed off could be to another sales agent, or it could be part of the current call where the sales agent takes an application. An MIS analyst who looks at data might look at the sourcing data and to do attribution reporting, etc. So it could be a number of different customers. Anyhow, this is just an example of SIPOC. You'd stack these SIPOCs side by side to build out what the next step in the flow is, and it just gives you another level of detail in your process. So this is another option to map your process. So that's how we recommend you look at your processes when you're doing process design. Thanks a lot. Hope you enjoyed this video and look forward to connecting with you soon. Take care.